Welcome to episode 15 of Fixing America with J Mel. This episode is entitled, What Protects Our Democracy and Preserves Our Freedom? In the last episode on popular sovereignty, we discussed how freedom of expression and information reveals the security of your sovereignty in a liberal democracy, and how the scientific revolution changed the philosophical construct of freedom and potentially explains the mentality that currently divides our country. In this episode, we will discuss civic participation, independent institutions that protect our sovereignty and preserve our freedom. It is said that citizen participation is indispensable in a liberal democracy. In today's climate, unfortunately, I fear most citizens question the truth of that statement because they have a blemished view of civic participation. Their view is restrictive because it is based on a belief that their vote is their only way to affect governance, and they question its effectiveness. They see polls that show overwhelming citizen support or opposition, yet governance follows the minority. The power of their vote and civic participation is blemished by the inescapable nastiness and rancor of partisan politics. Misinformation and disinformation are acceptable in governance. Civic participation is practically limited to partisan politics and rarely involves participation in substantive governance. It is typically restricted to voting, running for office, campaigning, volunteering at polls, signing or pushing a petition or referenda, and serving on a jury. When I attempt to initiate a conversation about a governance issue with another citizen, I frequently get rebuffed by, "Hey, I don't want to get into it. I vote, that's all I can do, and that's all I want to discuss." That sentiment is shared by a significant percentage of our population. Citizen disengagement is rampant. They feel powerless, and they do not want to waste their time on something that is beyond their control and that raises their blood pressure. Many years ago, when I was a young lawyer, a seasoned trial lawyer and active political party participant told me that politics is not about the truth. Politics is about winning. Politicians are expected to stretch the truth. It's about who can paint the most persuasive picture. Politics is a blood sport where anything goes. That's the way it is, son. Always has been and always will be. My question that prompted that epistle was, how can a candidate get away with telling that bold-faced lie? Partisan politics is poison, yet most scholars believe it is necessary in a democracy. But it turns me off. All I hear is how can we spin this to offset the spin of the other party's libelous campaign propaganda. Or this poll shows that this group of people are responding favorably to this slogan or that slogan or campaign promise. Personal attacks are vicious, denigrating, and often totally without factual basis. We hear more about the politics of an issue than we ever hear about the substantive issues affecting our country, state, county, or city. That's not new in America, but because mass media technology spreads misinformation and disinformation to the masses faster and more vividly than ever in our history, it may be at an all-time high on the destructiveness scale. And AI could have either a profound positive or negative effect on that problem. And news outlets that intentionally and maliciously spread false and misleading information, like Fox News did with the lies about the Dominion voting machines cheating President Trump out of the 2020 presidential election, create a serious First Amendment question. The scope of that Fox News and Trump fraud was staggering. We can say that with absolute confidence because we heard the testimony from their reporters and owners confirming their malicious perpetuation of Trump's lie to the American people that the election was rigged to cheat him out of the presidency. Fox News lost that lawsuit and paid Dominion $787 million in damages. Whether our judicial system will deter future conduct is yet to be seen, but the chilling effect it has on civil participation in our system of governance is tremendous, because citizens are skeptical about the trustworthiness of news media. Civic participation is, or should be, much more than merely casting votes. It should include active engagement in public dialogue and policy formation, working together to influence policy in society apart from partisan politics, shaping public opinion and democratic awareness through support of independent and local journalism, and participating in online civic platforms, using economic choices to express values by boycotting, participating in cooperatives, and advocating fair labor and trade practices, building democratic awareness and civic responsibility through teaching, engaging in civic education programs, and promoting inclusion and tolerance through cultural and educational initiatives, upholding and defending democratic norms by reporting corruption, abuse, and misconduct in government, and extending democracy beyond borders through international advocacy and participating in global civic networks. Unfortunately, Trump's focus is to suppress such civic participation. Trump's repeated assertion that the 2020 election was stolen or fraudulent is a prime example. His persistent lie erodes public confidence in our electoral system, which is vital for citizen participation in governance. Trump has and continues to allege the election was stolen because millions of illegal votes by non-citizens, dead people, felons, and phantom voters. His claims have been debunked. For example, a Pew study cited by Trump was about outdated registration records, not massive fraud. A federal court found that emails showing Trump's attorneys were aware that their claims had inaccurate numbers, yet they continued to file them. Former Attorney General William P. Barr and his DOJ found no evidence of fraud sufficient to change the election outcome, and Trump's legal filing cites reports with unknown authors, no documented sources, anecdotes, or unverified claims rather than robust empirical data. Trump and his allies filed 62 lawsuits contesting the election, and none of them were successful. He lied, and he knew it was a lie. Trump has signed an executive order entitled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections, which attempts to impose extra burdens on voters, which will make it harder for certain groups of voters. Keep in mind that our Constitution reserves the regulation of voting to the states. His actions push or exceed the scope of his authority to regulate how the states run their elections under the United States Constitution. Stated differently, he has taken steps to undermine the autonomy of states and agencies that administer elections. He is currently openly advocating the Republicans aggressively engage in widespread partisan gerrymandering as an effort to stave off a Democratic majority in Congress that could result in his third impeachment and force the release of the Epstein files. Trump has threatened election officials with prosecution and increased scrutiny and tried to limit organizations' ability to engage in voter registration drives. Such threats weaken civic participation and our sovereignty. If citizens believe voting is pointless, because the system is rigged, or that their vote won't count, then they may be less likely to engage. And that is precisely what we are seeing with some citizens. And that is what Trump believes will keep him in office: voter suppression. Happily, there is a better way. If politics was subordinated to substantive governance, policy decisions, administration, and problem-solving would be guided by evidence, expertise, and long-term public interest rather than short-term partisan advantage or electoral signaling. Politics would not be abolished, but electoral and partisan battles would be secondary to governance outcomes. In other words, our discussions and disagreements would predominantly be about the evidence, feasibility, fairness, etc., favoring one governance solution compared to the evidence, feasibility, fairness, etc., favoring another potential solution rather than politics. Under a subordinated political system of governance, voting would focus more on competence and policy proposals. Instead of protest and lobbying, citizen participation would emphasize policy review, monitoring outcomes, and evidence-based feedback, not just partisan advocacy. Instead of focusing on which party wins or loses, civic participation would be focused on which idea was proven to be the best for the most people under the applicable circumstances. Elections would be based more on continuity and quality of governance than political pride or which political party could raise and spend the most money to get elected. Citizens would have more effective ways to contribute to the success of their government, and the money previously wasted on partisan political races, which could be applied to solving governance problems. Using substantive governance instead of partisan politics would have citizens focus on outcomes and evidence-based policy rather than on symbolic issues and partisan alignment. Surveys show that many citizens want a greater voice in decisions, especially through mechanisms like participatory budgeting or citizen assemblies. Now, let's explore independent agencies that protect and preserve our freedom. Congress establishes independent agencies to carry out specific public functions designed to ensure expert, impartial decision-making in areas such as regulation, oversight, and protection of citizens' rights. They are independent of direct control by the president or political influence, and often led by commissioners or boards with fixed terms who can only be removed for cause. Now let's look at a few of our independent agencies. Agencies that enforce the rule of law are the Department of Justice, I hear you laughing, and the Federal Trade Commission. Agencies that protect our rights and liberties are the Equal Employment Commission and the Federal Communications Commission. Agencies that ensure government accountability are our Inspectors General, I hear your giggles, and the Government Accountability Office and the Office of Special Counsel. Agencies that maintain economic fairness and stability are the Federal Reserve Board, Security Exchange Commission, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Agencies that protect election integrity are the Federal Election Commission. Trump has fired or attempted to remove commissioners from the Equal Employment Commission, the National Labor Relations Board, the Merit Systems Protection Board, the Federal Trade Commission, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Communications Commission, and a governor of the Federal Reserve Board. This is not intended to be a complete list. Most, if not all, of Trump's attempts to remove the leaders of these independent agencies are currently being litigated in federal courts. And that does not count the defunding and firing of the employees of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and other agencies by Elon Musk and his Doge team. Trump's wholesale attack on independent agencies is a flagrant attempt to expand his control beyond any reasonable interpretation of our Constitution's guidelines. He wants to be the king of America and has boasted that he can do whatever he wants. Coupled with his admiration and emulation of the leaders of authoritarian, dictatorial, and fascist governments, these actions and statements lead to only one conclusion. Trump is attempting a coup to replace our democracy with a totalitarian or autocratic form of governance. But Trump is not the only one, and the fairness doctrine illustrates that point clearly. It was a federal policy of the FCC in 1949 that required broadcasters to devote airtime to issues of public importance and to present contrasting viewpoints on these points in a manner that was honest, equitable, and balanced. The fairness doctrine was found to be constitutional in the case of Red Lion Broadcasting Company versus the FCC in 1969. The doctrine was abolished in 1987 by the chairman of the FCC, Mark S. Fowler, during the Reagan administration, based on the conclusion that the FCC no longer served the public interest. That decision resulted in a cosmic shift towards deregulation and market-based free speech aligning with the Reagan administration's philosophy. The practical effect of the repeal of the fairness doctrine was to pave the way for ideological talk radio like Rush Limbaugh and opinion-based cable news networks like Fox News, CNN, etc., which increased polarization. What it actually did was to pave the way for a news network to actually become a political campaign weapon, which Trump has used effectively to dominate the airwaves with his lies. That, combined with social media algorithms, has fueled the toxic political atmosphere we live in today, which is so unsettling and harmful to our democracy. As a lawyer with 40-plus years of experience with our legal system, I have observed that most laws exist because some person, group, or company abused someone or something so badly or with such frequency to require regulation. So, to those people who criticize bureaucratic regulations, including myself, and want to blame all our governance problems on excessive regulations, please remember that the regulation came into existence because of someone's callousness, lack of respect, or greed. And we all suffer the consequences. The blame belonged on the people, companies, and industries who acted with disregard to their fellow citizens and our environment, or out of pure, unadulterated greed. I drive by abandoned or even producing oil wells and storage tanks and see barren, salt-soaked soil, rivers and streams polluted with industrial or human waste, and breathe air polluted with toxins. I read about explosions in workplaces caused by neglect, misfeasance, and malfeasance. Our history is replete with industries that refuse to treat workers with dignity and safe work conditions. It is those people and companies who create the demand for regulatory action of which they complain so bitterly. Civic participation in our system of governance can have a positive impact on those problems. The power of citizen involvement should not be underestimated. We can bring the giant corporations to their knees, and we can prevent governance problems that are a burden and annoying to everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of Fixing America with J Mel. Tune in again and don't forget to like the show, leave a comment, or subscribe so you can receive notifications of all the new episodes. Be safe and resist.